With the advent of the fourth industrial revolution, ushered in by the proliferation of robotics, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and other sentient technologies, we're witnessing a paradigm shift, radically changing not only what and how we do things, but also who we are as humans. As a result, the construction industry's fundamental assumptions, practices, and the processes are being profoundly transformed. In contradistinction to CAD, BIM, the virtual reality, and the digital fabrication innovations that either arose from within or adaptively absorbed by the industry, the robotics and artificial intelligence revolution is a disruptive movement from outside the industry and led by the generation of young tech entrepreneurs originating from Silicon Valley and other startup innovations hubs from Boston to Hyderabad. How might the fourth industrial revolution transform architecture, engineering, and construction industries? Why should architects pay attention to robotics and artificial intelligence now? What are the prospects, challenges, and opportunities? In his tour de force keynote speech, Professor Dr. Mahesh Daas will paint a panoramic picture of the robotics revolution, its consequences for the future of architecture and the construction. And I'm especially excited to introduce our esteemed guest and the keynote speaker of the conference, Professor Dr. Mahesh Daas. To please welcome Professor Dr. Mahesh Daas for his keynote speech. Welcome.
Good morning to you all. Good morning. Okay, good. We're all awake. I know it is Sunday morning, and thank you for attending this session. It is truly a special honor for me to stand here before you today. It is my hometown, and it's kind of a homecoming. My classmates are here from JNTU. Yeah, it's a raucous bunch. And my family is here, my mother and my sister and my relatives, brother-in-law, everyone join here. And really, I feel that I am amongst wonderful friends. What a wonderful group to address and share this 1 hour with you. So that's a shout out to my classmates there. That's from Chandigarh in 1989, and went on a tour there. And I just want to kind of give you a little bit of background of my position, where I'm coming from, so that you can see today's talk in that perspective. So my graduate work was on the city of Banaras, and I wrote a thesis that was a work of fiction as an extension to Kashi Khanda. And I did that when I was at Kansas State University. Consider me more a meteorologist. I'm a weatherman, coming to you with weather forecast for what's on the way. I am not an evangelist of technology. In fact, I take a critical position to it, but I am immersed in it. Obviously, as you heard from the generous and kind introduction that Aditya has made. So I want to keep that in mind as we go through it. And we will take a critical look and see why the topic of robotics, construction robotics, matters for us architects. Why should we care about it? So that's the question we are going to ask. So this is what I'm going to talk about today. First, I'm going to frame it within the notion of fourth industrial revolution. And second, understanding robotics, because we do hear about robotics, but we don't quite wrap our head around it when we say, what is it? And the third is, I will dive into construction robotics. And there is a reason why I do that, and I'll tell you in a moment. Then there is construction technology, startup revolution, which is a special phenomenon that we need to take note of. And then finally, the role of architects and the impact on architecture. Those are the topics I'm going to cover today. First, the fourth industrial revolution. And in this particular revolution, there are certain technologies that play a role. But first, let's take a look at one by one. First, second, third, and fourth industrial revolution. So the first industrial revolution, you may remember that it's Industry 1.0, and it was powered by coal. And the number of things that came out of it, including architecturally significant things, Crystal Palace, Reba was formed, AIA was formed. So professionalization of architecture was taking place at the advent of first industrial revolution. Second industrial revolution was powered by gas, electricity, and oil. And at that time, there are a number of things happened. In fact, that is the most significant period that we all are familiar with in terms of the modernism that has emerged and a number of phenomena that are related to mobility, obviously, airplanes and ocean liners and so on and so forth. So a lot of things happened in the second industrial revolution. In the third industrial revolution, we are looking at really, it's powered by, in addition to coal and oil and natural gas, nuclear energy. And in that particular phase, we're looking at a number of architectural developments that were challenging, questioning the existential and architecturally meaningful or meaninglessness of architecture, or so on and so forth. There was an existential turmoil during that phase. And social media emerged during that time. Digital fabrication emerged during that time. 3D printing, all of these technologies belong to that era. And now experts agree that there is indeed, we are in the phase of fourth industrial revolution. And this is characterized by clean energy, that is the movement of where the world is going. And a number of technologies that define it are the sentient technologies, the intelligent technologies, smart technologies, intelligence, artificial intelligence becomes part of that. And then, of course, we have the potential for colonization of other planets. And those are possible because of robotics and artificial intelligence. In fact, going to Mars would not be possible without robotics. And so that's why we are actually seeing it now. And in terms of architecturally, we are now at the beginning of it. We may take a look at some things that are happening. We don't know where it is going to go. I don't know where it is going to go. But we look at some things that are interesting, that move toward embedded intelligence in everything, including buildings, and how they would connect with us, interact with us, and hopefully empower us at a planet scale. So that's the fourth industrial revolution. And I'm not advocating for it. It is the fact of the world. So as I said, I'm a weatherman here. So looking at the first industrial revolution, architecturally is something significant. One thing I'll point out is, in Crystal Palace, the notion that you can bring nature inside, that the outside can come inside, was one of the important things. Not only that, that gave the confidence to humankind that somehow you could control nature, right? So that is what we see. That is what I wanted to note, one of the many things. In the second industrial revolution, we saw the notion that nature can not only come inside, we can create our own ground. For instance, like in Villa Savoye, Le Corbusier's Villa Savoye, we see that there is a garden at many levels, disconnected or displaced from the ground. So the figure-ground relationship began to change even more with the next industrial revolution. And I put Doshi's work there because I really like it, one, but secondly, it begins to show a different way of handling the same theme, same concept, but in a different cultural setting. In the third industrial revolution, the figure-ground relationship gets even blurred. You cannot tell what is figure, what is ground, and that may be good or bad, it doesn't matter, but that is the phenomenon, okay? Now, what happens in the fourth industrial revolution? We don't know yet. And it is a question we could ponder, and I hope we do. So, in summary, what we design, who we design for, how we design, all of those are changing the context with the advent of robotics and AI. So let's talk about first an overview of robotics very quickly. And that's important to understand the broad social context of why we need to care about this. So first question is, what or who is a robot? You think you know the answer. We all do, actually. The next slide will reveal who it is or what it is. That is, of course, from Rajini's Robo, so I thought that is one answer. A famous one, right? But here is a working definition that I use, which is a robot is something that senses the world, thinks about it, and then acts in the world to bring about some change that is physical. A robot is physical, it is autonomous, it is intelligent in how it operates in the world. Keep that in mind. And there are a couple of frameworks I cover in the book towards robotic architecture. First one is morphological framework. So robots are classified by form. So the first one is zooid, so it is human or animal-like form. And the form is very important. Not the level of intelligence in the robot, but the form itself is important. You will see it. Second is mechanomorphic, which means it looks like a machine, machines that we know. Third is amorphic, has no particular form, and the next one is metamorphic, which can change forms. Okay, so those are important to remember, and throughout my presentation, keep an eye out for what kind of robot we are talking about. Then there is the interaction framework, where it's robot-to-robot interaction, robot-to-human, robot-to-architecture, and robot-human architecture, and robot interaction. So robotics and AI are characterized by interaction. And that's a very important aspect of that, too. So first, let's look at a few quick things. Robots are transforming the notion of domesticity. I mean, there are robotic mops and robotic vacuum cleaners. We have robotic lawnmowers available now in the market already. Robotic kitchens are a luxury item, but they are available nevertheless. Robots are transforming mobility. This is Piaggio's Gita, and Gita is a personal cargo robot. So you could have the robot instead of your backpack, and the robot will come to you. You can summon it from anywhere across the town, so you or your family can send you stuff. You can send books anywhere, whatever. It is cargo robot. And by the way, that was developed in collaboration with an architect, Greg Lynn. Then FedEx is experimenting with robotic delivery systems. Why? You probably are already ordering from Amazon, right? And there are going to be many more, and so it's playing a role in that, and that's a prototype. Then we are talking about autonomous vehicles and their impact on the cities and how we move around and how the space changes, time changes as well. Then we have warehouse robots that are transforming the delivery systems and logistics. Right? In this case, there's a robot called Squid, which does everything in the warehouse. You get the idea? Ford's concept about autonomous vehicles combined with robots in the delivery logistics system. But the humanoid form is interesting to note, as I said. We're talking about drones that might provide urban mobility, and that's being experimented in a variety of cities around the world. And that as well. Uber is also experimenting. Robots are transforming agriculture. So there are a lot of farming robots that are being employed today. And then there are urban farming robots that might make urban farming possible in dense urban conditions as well. They are helping us, they're flying, they're transforming and colonizing space. So Mars, by the way, is the only planet in the entire universe, known universe, inhabited only by robots. Think about that for a moment. And now all the kind of rockets that we see today are robots. SpaceX Falcon, for instance. Or we have robotic weapons that are a gigantic concern. And there are international laws being enacted to regulate or to control robotic weapon production. They are helping us understand our planet better by being able to remote sense, right? So we are looking at ocean conditions in areas that humans cannot or won't go or cannot be there forever, and so submersible robots like this. Or tree, in terms of forestation, rapid forestation solutions like this. So they're all playing a role. And they're playing social roles. It shouldn't be a surprise. Guess what form the robots would take in a social role? Human. So we have Sophia, who's a political robot. Sophia has actually citizenships in a number of countries and can be interviewed and can talk about a variety of world issues. But the human form, and particularly the gendered human form, is worth noting. Children with autism, there are robotic solutions, or elder care support in a variety of countries. And surgical solutions, this is a very sophisticated robot, Da Vinci. And if you think religion is an exception, think again. So we have a robot called Bless You Too. So the Bless You Too robot can bless you in 5 different languages. It was a prototype and experiment, and it was interesting. But this is a serious robot. This is a little robot, an assistant to a monk in China, Xian Fan. Master Xian Fan has this robot monk and can recite scriptures. We do get emotionally attached to the robots, unlike any other technology. I don't get attached to this speaker. I don't get attached to this robot, this particular remote, or my laptop, phone. Of course, I do get attached to phone. We all do, but not emotionally speaking. But with robots, it's a different story. So in Japan, there typically are funerals held for dead robot dogs. People do feel a need to grieve and to bid farewell to their beloved robot dog, which has died. Think about why that is important and how that is transforming the human condition itself, what it is to be human. Now let me do a little more deeper dive into construction robotics. So all of that is a background, and this is more closer to our home here. And articulated arm robots such as this one, you can attach really anything to the end of it. The end effectors can do a number of things. Here is a bandsaw, and that can cut through along the grain in a particular way, so you can control it extraordinarily well. This is a wood framing robot, ETH Zurich, where they built an entire building's roof framing system with the use of this robot. Or foam cutting robots, with which my friends across the river from the BAC at MIT Brandon Clifford and others have done these kinds of structures with foam. And this is a 3D metal printing robot which can print metal in free space. And with that, we are able to now create furniture or works of art or large works of architecture, such as this one. We are looking at robots that are building structures themselves as they move along, right? This is MX3D in the Netherlands. And then there are tandem robots that work together using artificial intelligence in order to dent sheet metal, to give it the structural properties, and together compute it to become robust structures such as this. So these kinds of possibilities are becoming now not only conceivable, but actually real. Right? So, and we are looking at, this is at AA London, where they took a robot right in the middle of the forest, and they harvested a number of tree branches. And by computing the tree branches, they were able to construct a structure. And there they did in situ structure like that using construction robotics. And friends at ETH Zurich, they are also experimenting with drone-based construction. So I'll play a video here. That was done actually quite a while ago, so it's already being explored quite significantly. And robotic weaving of carbon fiber structures that are then baked and make the lightest weight structures like this. Friends at ICD Stuttgart are working on stuff like this. Obviously 3D printing, we all know 3D printing, but this is robotic 3D printing, which is different from the previous generation of 3D printing. So this is Lake Flato's building. And there are actually firms which are utilizing robotics as their core strength. So this is Intelligent City is a firm, and they are up in Canada, and they specialize in utilizing this, and they promote it as a competitive advantage in providing these kinds of services. So in this case, they actually have built buildings using the robotic production technologies as the core of their practice. This is a robotic bricklayer, so this can go onto the sites and a house-scale bricklaying and or masonry units of any kind. And of course, this is gantry-based robot 3D printing an entire structure. Cobard is a company there in Denmark. And then we have a lot of robotics. Built Robotics is developing stuff like this, which I will show you a little more about, where construction site is being transformed with autonomous earth-moving equipment and a variety of other equipment. Even construction cranes, there are autonomous construction cranes, robotic in nature, that are being developed. And I just wanted to give you also a glimpse of what we are doing at Boston Architectural College, because your question would be, what are you doing there? And here is what we are doing.
Technology has been the biggest force that has been shaping our civilizations.
What I find very interesting and what we're doing at the BAC is to suggest what can we learn from robotic design.
The question is, how can we make technology more accessible We want to put our students in the front seat.
We want to create educational experiences, right, that are open to anyone who's interested. Our campus is situated within the heart of Boston.
And we have been really playing a role in how the city grows and evolves. And so providing educational experiences and participating in research activities that are shaping the world is what the BAC is trying to do.
We also want to continue partnering, whether they're in Boston or whether they're somewhere else in the world.
We educate our students through partnerships. So we partner with a variety of organizations like Autodesk or a number of organizations around the world. So one of the partnerships that we have just participated in is with RWTH Aachen University in Germany. The chair of individualized production in architecture, university professor Sigrid Brell Kochen, and the managing editor of Construction Robotics Journal, Ethan Kerber. They have developed this extraordinary workshop, and we were very excited to be one of the very first participants.
We've had students participating seriously, but playfully in these workshops with robots in Germany. And we've sat here on our campus and watched a robot do something that one of our students programmed it to do. There's some really great innovation in that. What can I simulate? What can I think about? What can I wonder and wander into in collaboration not only with a robot, but also with other partners, collaborators around the world that might have different, diverse views.
The world is being transformed by robotics and artificial intelligence. And now we are in fourth industrial revolution. Our advantage is that we are independent and we are autonomous, and hence we have degrees of freedom, quickly moving to embrace opportunities. And I think we are taking full advantage of that.
So that's a kind of glimpse of what we are doing at the BAC. And I just wanted to, because there is a special person here who participated in this workshop from Hyderabad, Takbir Fatima, architect here in Hyderabad. So she's with us today, and so she actually collaborates with us, and she has a workshop that she offers herself. So I'm glad that she could join us today. Absolutely. Thank you. So there is an approach, and then the question that I'm now going to address is construction industry the next industry to be disrupted? You know, we have seen a variety of industries disrupted, healthcare, entertainment, you just name it. But now we have this important question. Construction industry has been probably the most opaque or resistant to technology in general, and you wonder, why should robotics be any different? Let's ponder that question. So, construction robotics revolution. So disruption, the way I address disruption is that there are new incumbents in the industry who actually disrupt established players. So established players, take a note. Let's take a quick example, Blockbuster versus Netflix. You might or might not be familiar with Blockbuster, but Blockbuster was the largest video cassette renting company in the US. And they had market capitalization of $8.4 billion in 1994, and then started something called Netflix a little while later. And they were like, oh, that's a little company. They are mailing DVDs. They're not going to do anything. And they ignored it. And Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy in 2010, and the current valuation, or the 2020 valuation of Netflix is close to $203 billion. So that is how disruption works in the industries. Same thing with Kodak. You all know Kodak. We all have used Kodak film. I shouldn't say we all have. I'm dating myself there. We don't use film anymore, I guess. But when we did, Kodak actually was the first to invent the digital camera in 1975. And then they said to the person who invented in Kodak, oh, this is very amusing, keep it quiet, lock it away in our archives, and they went bankrupt in 2012. So, this is McKinsey's study that's recently done about the kinds of research that is taking place, or what are the clusters that are active in construction-related industries. Now, there are a number of clusters there, but there are only 3 things I'm going to point out. So first thing is cluster in the top right, in the middle right, and then bottom right. Those are in the periphery. But that is where the disruption is coming from. And that is to do with digital twins, robotics, artificial intelligence. So we are taking note of the activity that is happening, how many companies are invested in this area in the industry. We don't see them because they are on the periphery at the moment, like Netflix was. And if you look at also how various industries are adopting AI, financial services, top right, high-tech industry, they are the ones to adapt, and construction industry is the lowest. But the disruption is actually coming from the financial industries and high-tech industries to construction industry. So the players are in the top right, and we are at the bottom. So it is coming from outside into the industry, which is a different phenomenon than any time before. And that is why I say this is the 4th industrial revolution. There's a difference. Obviously, we know cost overruns and schedule overruns are very common in construction industry. It is ripe for disruption. Labor shortage. Definitely in the West, labor shortage is a big deal. But from talking to you, a number of you, you tell me that labor shortage is indeed a problem here as well. I'm describing the conditions. And this is how the construction industry is typically today, at least in the West, if not everywhere, where you have a project and you have a project-based organization of a variety of systems in terms of development, design, in terms of supply chains, and in terms of material distribution, assembly, prefabrication, and then putting the building together. But that is how discrete and perhaps disorganized the system is. Two, where McKinsey sees this heading, is you may have clustered and combined resources that may be able to build not only efficiencies, but actually revolutionize the workflows in the construction industry. And this is where I talk about, so I talk about these outsiders. Who are these outsiders? What do they look like? Where do they come from? So let's look at that. In the US, the venture capital or investments that are going into startups in construction technology outpaces any other industry. And this is a new phenomenon since 2020. So it's absolutely brand new. And construction technology startup funding in India also follows the same pattern. So this is data from India. And people in India are talking about construction tech is likely to play a key role in a variety of ways. Even in residential construction in India. So these are actually all data points from India. I thought that was actually, when I started looking at this stuff, I was surprised by how much has been happening in India itself. And these are all the kinds of startups that are in the construction technology space around the world. And this is in Mexico and in the US. There are about 50 plus companies playing a role. And I'll show you one of them, at least a few of these. So these are all people with computer science, perhaps robotics engineering, some other background. not architecture or anything related to construction industry. That I found very curious.
My name is Dan Blank. I'm the CEO of Toggle. Toggle is a construction robotics company working to make some of the most difficult and dangerous tasks in construction safer and more efficient. As construction becomes larger and more complex, we're still relying upon methods that are old and unchanged from previous generations. And specifically, reinforced concrete is the most common building material in all of construction. And the process for putting together rebar, which is found on every construction site, is highly manual labor intensive and very inefficient. Working with rebar is a very difficult process for humans. The bars are very large and heavy and difficult to manipulate. And so our solution is to introduce robotics into this process to take the heavy lifting out of humans' hands and allow automation and machinery to make the process more efficient. With humans focusing on the jobs that best suited their abilities and robotics doing the heavy lifting. So what it does is it decreases the labor cost by about half and can increase the productivity by 5 times the old process. By transitioning to digital design and fabrication of concrete, we can engineer more efficient use of materials and actually reduce the amount of concrete being used in construction while still getting the same structural benefit. We believe that the construction industry is in the midst of a major transition, and at Toggle we want to be leaders in the introduction of robotics into the way that we build cities and large-scale infrastructure.
So there you have it. That is a phase of innovation. They are young, they come from different disciplines, they are optimistic, they are full of energy, and more importantly, they're full of investment and they're cash rich, as you just saw. And we are, by the way, starting an innovation incubator in Boston ourselves to promote design-driven innovation in this space, to work with a number of other ecosystem players in the New England area. And in the first wave of robotics in construction, it is task-based. And that is to be expected in the first wave. It looks very basic. And these are the difficult tasks to do, repetitive tasks. And sure enough, they can be roboticized. You know, stuff like that, which are extremely difficult for humans to do at any given length of time. And robots like this, where you have a number of tasks. These are all task-based robots. They're layout robots. They are, robotic mini factories you can set up on site, construction site. Drywall can be installed, framing can be done, painting can be done, a number of things. So these are all already in effect. In addition to that, exoskeleton robots, which means that you can wear. These are wearable robotics that augment the human capacities. Right? And here, you cannot tell where the human begins and the robot ends and vice versa. You see, it blurs the distinction between robots and humans in interesting ways. We think robots are the other. Think again. So things like that, and like that, superhuman stuff, and like that.
For most of us, construction and mining sites seem distant from our day-to-day realities. Fact is, heavy industry serves us every single day, and in ways we don't even realize, from the roads we drive on to the electronics we use in our day-to-day lives. Almost everything around us was built through heavy construction or created using minerals and resources mined from the earth. Increasing demand for more goods and infrastructure, compounded with industry labor shortages, safety conditions, and widespread inefficiencies, are impacting these important industries, and in doing so, threatening the products and infrastructure that billions of people rely on every single day. We need a smarter approach to heavy industry. Safe AI is pioneering that smarter approach. We're at the forefront of a movement to accelerate the world's transition to autonomous construction and mining. making work sites more productive, efficient, and safer. Our autonomous kit has been purpose-built for off-highway equipment and to serve the unique challenges of heavy industry. Our vehicle-agnostic solution combines universal component hardware with our AI-powered autonomy software, all designed to automate entire fleets, streamline workflows, and power 24/7 operations. With this interoperable fleet-agnostic technology, we're able to retrofit any vehicle, giving customers faster access to autonomy than ever before. The end result is making work sites safer and more productive now, not years from now. And our vision for connected work sites doesn't stop there. With our autonomous management system, operators can orchestrate entire fleets of autonomous and manned equipment. Site planning, vehicle insights, and fleet dispatching are all at your fingertips, making autonomous management and execution easier. This is the continuing vision of the connected worksite, powered uniquely by Safe AI. In a future that is safer, smarter, and more productive. One that is here today and being deployed by our customers across the world. This is Safe AI.
So what you just saw was mining industry. So there is a disruption line coming from mining industry. So why are mining and construction industries more suitable for autonomous earth-moving equipment or any construction equipment? And why are we not seeing the autonomous vehicles in our cities right now? Now we are talking about 5, 6, 7 years after it started. That's because the construction site environments provide controlled environments, regulated, predictable, and highly methodical. And so they are more suitable for autonomous robotic integration like what we just saw. And that is interesting why construction industry is a nice target for robotic automation. So now, I'm going to just speculate a little bit, but I'm going to show you some concrete work. There's a friend of mine, Philip Beasley, in Canada, who does interesting work, has been doing, and I will offer it as perhaps, only perhaps, as one glimpse of what might emerge in the fourth industrial revolution that hits closer to home in terms of architecture, and the qualities and characteristics of architecture, approaches to architecture, which is a different paradigm.
So halozoism is a lovely word from the ancient Greek, which means life coming out of material. And it's a concept that perhaps each of us have had an experience of when we were children, debating whether rocks are alive or not. In this project, halozoism is quite specific. That is, we are working with subtle materials and electricity and chemistry, weaving together interactions that at first create a responsive architecture that simulates life. But increasingly, these interactions are starting to act like life, like some of the ingredients of life. Certainly in the chemical interactions that we're working with here, we are working with wet chemistries that are showing catalytic loops that are starting to generate new forms of artificial life. But this project starts with a very simple, primitive kind of architecture. That is, a responsive architecture which makes space, which weaves space together with hyperbolic meshworks. The kind of meshworks that we see stretching around here, unclothed, without the mechanisms, are a kind of a geotextile, that is, a landscape reinforcement that makes a fundament, a kind of a new terrain, which is a basic kind of architecture, the act of creating the earth itself and of folding it together into a terrain that all of us can meet on and be sheltered by. This meshwork then is clothed with arrays of mechanisms which work in subtle ways in order to allow the entire environment to start to breathe and shift and move in relationship to us.
So there you have it. Look, the language, listen to that language, right? Language of interaction, intelligence, responsiveness, movement. You have lifelike. Not only lifelike, but actually primitive forms of life. Architecture as living in a literal sense, in this case. So the language begins to change of how you describe the built environment, architecture. We only so far have talked about architecture as living in either metaphorical sense, but not in a literal sense as we are beginning to see that. It adds to the repertoire of architecture and architectural languages and possibilities. Not that the whole world is going to look like that, but actually the possibilities like that might emerge in this era of robotics and AI. So once again, what we design, who we design for, how we design and build the world is being transformed with robotics and AI. And it is important to take note of that. So here are the two questions I'm going to conclude with. Why should architects care about robotics? And will robots take over the world? Which is a question I get at any of my talks. So I thought I'll put it out there. Right? Didn't you have that question in your mind? Right? You did? Yes. Because it can be anxiety-provoking when you listen to things like this, and you're like, oh my God, what is happening? And there is an existential angst. So we'll talk about that in the Q&A. And here is my answer to it is, if you're not at the table, you are on the menu. So we need to decide whether we are going to be at the table or on the menu. I decided that I'm going to be at the table and help shape these technologies in ways that are beneficial to the human condition, to the planet, and to the future generations. So that is where I'd like to wrap up and say that we have talked about fourth industrial revolution. We understood robotics in some elemental way, wrapped our head around it. We talked about construction robotics and the startup revolution and how architecture might be impacted as a result of it. Thank you very much. On time? Good.
That's one robotic precision in
Robotic
timing.
precision.
And we're going to talk about that a lot. And I take this opportunity to thank Professor Dr. Mahesh Daas once again for having accepted our invitation to come over all the way and be amongst us and share your insights, experiences, and the immense and exhaustive knowledge that you have gained in this area. And I'm pretty sure the audience also agree with me, and on that note, I request them to give him another round of applause. I am reminded of yesterday when our chief guest was talking about his mentioning about somebody telling him there are two kinds of people. One is the artist, and this second one is the scientist. And the minister went ahead telling there are third person, he was an architect. And now I think you all agree there will be a fourth entity in the future, the robots, who is going to make our lives either immensely pleasurable or immensely horrific. And I'm wishing that there is a healthy debate on this subject. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of questions coming forth from the audience. But what I really gathered from this little presentation of Professor Mahesh Daas is that he has demystified the definition of what robot is and what robot does. We all think whenever we are referring to the term robots, we picture this walking, talking humanoid with a lot of metal and glowing LED bulbs, the Terminator kind of a thing. And I think it basically means that I think his presentation, in a way, has thrown a light on the other definitions that can be considered. A broader perspective has been achieved in understanding what a robot does and what it can do. And another interesting thing I found particularly worth mentioning here is how you have related the industrial revolutions, the four industrial revolutions, to the architectural development, the morphology of the entire architectural envelope, linking it to the figure-ground relationship. I think that was very interesting, sir. And of course, you have put a big question mark on the fourth industrial revolution. I'm pretty sure you have a fair idea of what it's going to look like. And maybe in your next session, maybe you will have a better clarity and also a clear definition how it would look like. I'd not take much time. I think there's a little paucity of time, and I would throw open the session to the audience for the Q&A session. Professor Daas is very eager to listen from you. In fact, he wanted at least 15 minutes of his time to be spent on the Q&A.
Is it the time now for the change of architectural education syllabus in India? Question one. If the robots are going to do a creative thinking, what the architect is going to think in near future?
Yeah, great question. Your name?
Raj.
Raj, thank you for the question. I think that is a good question for education. And the answer is, in a way, it's a rhetorical question too, because you're already pondering how education should respond, syllabus should change. So the answer is, of course, we have to consider that possibility. And as some in the audience might know, I actually throw out the notion of syllabus altogether. I take a more entrepreneurial approach to education without such kinds of guardrails and such. But anyway, that's a different notion, entrepreneurial notion. So I think that a mix of entrepreneurship and education that may lead to perhaps education from primary, secondary, tertiary levels in the fourth industrial revolution. We are still stuck to and wedded to the first industrial revolution paradigms in education. I think we need to reinvent it. Absolutely, yes. Not just the syllabus, but the education systems.
We have a question here from architect Shankar Narayan. Okay, sir.
Yes,
Architect
sir.
Uday.
I'm Mahesh, Uday Shankar, the chairman of Telangana. My question to you is, it's such an interesting subject that we started on with. Unknowingly, actually, we realized, like the kind of things that you showed, actually, we've almost started to depend a little bit on robotics already. I mean, some of the things that you're using it. How far are we? I mean, like when you showed the periods, I mean, Industrial Revolution 1 and Industrial Revolution 2, there has been a time factor. I mean, how many years it took for a certain change to happen in a society. And second one is supposed to have happened even faster. I read a book when I was in college about future shock. Alvin, I forgot the name, but they were talking about, you said angst. When you actually have looked forward to something which is a little threatening to your own intelligence and your own, there is a little bit. But where do you think we are now with respect to the time factor? I mean, it's supposedly even more faster and faster kind of a movement towards robotics. So where do you think we are now, and what is that you would suggest a kind of a direct approach towards this? Like for a guy senior like me, do you suggest that how do I get myself involved into thinking on those lines? That's something which I'd like to.
Now, that's such a thoughtful question. Thank you so much for that. I think that begins to show you are already wondering how you yourself personally, but also professionally as a community, we should be engaged in it. And the answer first is the time frame is, the experts say that we are already in it, almost a decade into it. And that we are beginning to see, it's almost like an exponential, there is a curve that is a flat front end, and then there is a steeper exponential curve as we move into it. We are at the flat front end of it right now. So we are not noticing in our daily experience yet, at least here. In the West, you begin to see a little more of it, but even there, when I give this talk, people cannot believe, incredulous about it, but it's happening. And that's why I say I'm connecting the dots. I'm talking about the weather of this fourth industrial revolution. And before it is too late, we begin to need to shape it. So I think we all need to ponder that. The most important thing is, as I said at the beginning, we have to wonder what it is to be human. What is humanness in this age? Unless we ponder that, we certainly are going to be at the receiving end of it and or experience the inadvertent side effects or even main effects of it. So I think I'm with you, and we need to absolutely inquire and interrogate and critique these technologies and shape them before they shape us.
Hi, Mahesh. Nice to see you up there.
Great to see you, sir.
Thank you. It was a fascinating glimpse into what we are heading towards. I have just one question. How do you see the intersection of genetics, AI, and robotics? Especially the last slide you showed, the moving things. See, nature has already figured out how to move. Humans move, animals move, trees grow. So just a little injection of genetics. Suppose I buy a seed in a supermarket, embedded with intelligence, and it grows into a house or some farm. Where do you think that is going to lead? Where is that intersection coming? Because that is the thing which I think is the next leap in thing.
Well, you are absolutely insightful, and I'll tell you why I did not actually show you anything in that direction. That can be scary. There are actually robots, there are biological robotics that are taking place that are at microbial scale level as well as larger scale. And so there is an entire branch of robotics that is a kind of intersection of genetics and artificial intelligence and robotics. Now, where that is going to go, we don't know, but it's an important question to ask. Its relation to architecture, I haven't found yet. I mean, of course, in the book, we do cover it in what we call soft robotics, but we haven't gone beyond that because we haven't seen a direct intersection yet. That does not mean it won't be, but at least at the moment it is a very interesting medical. For example, in the field of medicine, that is very much already a reality. We are talking about robots that will go into the body and do a number of things. It can be scary, utterly scary. So I just didn't pick it up because it was kind of a detour. But thank you for raising the question. Ham.
Hello.
Hello. Mahesh, I have a crazy question. I'm Narsimham here. Okay, we all humans are heading towards, with the help of robots and machine learning and so on and so forth. We're trying to create our own ecosystems, right? There is already ecosystems in the globe, right? In the form of ecospheres, whatever, the biosphere and all that. So is already robotics there in the form of rocks, clouds, trees, water, ocean, land? My question.
Yeah, great question, Ham. And as you always ask those insightful questions, by the way, Ham and I stayed with him for 2 summers at SPA Delhi when I was working on Connaught Place for my thesis. Thank you. It's good to reconnect. So the question is, again, I didn't want to scare you with the reframing of it, but actually we are robots. We are biological robots. According to the definition I gave, we do come under that category. And in fact, famous roboticists have said that we are robots. So we think we are not robots because we call ourselves humans, but humans may mean robots to somebody else. So by that definition, we are very advanced biological robots. That's one perspective. And if that is the perspective, there is no such thing as distinction between natural and human-made. And that we are in the age of Anthropocene. According to geologists, we are already in the era where it is everything is touched by humans, everything is somehow transformed by humans. There is nothing other than that. We may think there is something pristine, but there is not. According to the geologists' marking, they said we are in the Anthropocene era. And what may be coming next is perhaps, I don't know, a robotic scene or whatever, but we are in that era. So the epochs they call about, we are already there. As to how those systems interact, I think is a good question. And I showed you the glimpse of how we begin to learn more about the planet and the planetary ecosystems in greater depth, but that itself is intervention.
They say rocks have memory.
Yes,
Water has memory.
yes, yes,
Plants speak to you.
yes,
So there is already robotics and everything in the nature.
absolutely. Life cannot emerge from inert material unless there is life in everything. So I agree with you completely.
Murthy is with the next question. Architect Suryanarayan Murthy.
Hello. I think this reminds me something about, we are talking about Advaita in architecture.
Sure.
So because we are talking about robotics is nothing but what we are already in.
Yes.
And biological, we are all biological robots.
Yes.
So are we talking something about Advaita here?
Well, how about the next time we talk, give a talk on that alone? But that's a great question. Thank you for that. I think that does raise the questions that actually we are addressing in the next book that is going to come out next spring, next year, in January, February of 2023. The next book is called Being Human, Being Robot, where we are pondering questions of that nature. Where we say the difference between humans and robots is one is born, the other is made. That is the definition we normally use now. But we can challenge that and say humans are not born, humans are made. There is no such thing as being born from complete blankness and emptiness. It is a continuity of life, of the genome, of a variety of factors, right? So there is no such thing. And you are absolutely right. So there is, in that case, no, shall we say, it is Advaita. You're absolutely right. It does get to that notion. And I think that's where we are going to go more, in pondering what it is to be human. You know, when clocks were invented, machines were invented, we began to see ourselves as machines. When the computer was invented, we thought we are computers. We still do, right? We process stuff, we download things, we upload things, we use language coming from that paradigm. And with robotics and AI, that is where we are headed, that we begin to define ourselves with our own creations. But great question.
So we have a few last questions.
We have
from
only
your
10 or
LF.
15 more questions is what, no, I'm just kidding.
3 questions.
Three questions.
Last 3 questions.
Yeah, Mahesh, I'm R.K.
Yes.
Rao here. Very, very invigorating presentation. So my question is an extension to Mr. Murthy's. He stopped at Advaita. I'm talking about Vishishtha Advaita. It's a simple question. Vis-a-vis humans, once the robots are fully developed or they take the human form, where do we stand? Or are we going on the table or on the menu? And where do you and me, the designer and the developer, stand in this case? Are we going to be erased totally because everything is pre-programmed, predestined?
Yeah.
So manufacturing, designing, and I don't know, piling up the whole thing. So where do we stand in a, if not now, in a future, maybe 10 years, 15 years down the road?
Yeah.
In the distant future, we can say.
Absolutely. I would say I don't know the answer, but I think that is a question. That is the question we have to ask, and that's what we need to raise. And we need to be at the table to be able to discuss those.
Sure.
So we have the
Absolutely,
next
yes.
question here on to your right.
Yeah.
By Architect Simon.
Hi,
Back there.
Architect Mahesh here. So Mahesh
my namesake.
namesake, yes. So I'm from Lonavala Center. My question is, like, with a revolution, there is always a opposition or resistance from the industry itself.
Yes.
In the Indian scenario, when we talk, our Indian construction industry caters to 70% of unskilled, skilled laborers, unorganized labor industries, and employment of those people.
Yeah.
So what will be the future approach to upskill those laborers
Yeah.
when we are talking about within the fraternity also? So those laborers in the industry of robotics, what is the approach, and is there any such programs or something we are working on?
Yeah, a fantastic question. I think that is the social disruption that is going to take place with these technologies moving unchecked. And so, yes, I agree with you completely that,
Sir?
As we, never mind, the presentation is gone. I was going to show something in the presentation, but the labor disruption is the biggest question, social equity, and what it is going to do to people in the minority and people who are underrepresented and oppressed, traditionally oppressed, anywhere in the world. That is a question because they are the ones who are going to be the most affected, negatively speaking. So that is a question for the policymakers and all of us to ponder. And we'll say, what is the implication of these technologies? It's not just the unskilled, underskilled labor. It is actually highly skilled labor that is also going to be impacted. Somebody was asking me the question yesterday, will architects be out of commission? You know, that is, I mean, if somebody is actually asking the question, there is that possibility, right? So I think it is a question for the societies to address. And that's why this is not just an adoption of BIM or CAD technologies into architecture. This is a fundamental transformational phenomenon and a new paradigm we have to address.
True. Thank you. Thank
Professor
you, sir.
Mahesh, we have one last question coming from onto your right side. Architect
Sure.
Simon, he is also the speaker.
Hello. Thank you very much. Amazing presentation, Mahesh. I have one last question is related to the same that we are all asking about the scary future, but also it's very exciting to know that what is going to happen. My question is, we live in an inflationary society. Our capitalist society needs a little bit of inflation to evolve. But meanwhile, our technology creates deflation. Basically, the more in an exponential age we improve our technology, the cheaper becomes everything. So the same way that some years ago, only few people was able to take a photograph, just like novelty or very wealthy people, and now we take infinite amount of photography daily, and it's barely free. Photography and consumption of images and media is free. Do you think robotics will help us to create finally a true democratic and free housing for everyone, apart of if we have a job or not, the architects?
Yeah, that's a great question, Simon. I appreciate that. I think the question is what we are going to do with the technology, which is a question of human choice and institutional prerogative, if we want to take it up as a question. The answer is it can be, but will it be? I don't know the answer to it. It can be is an answer that I would like to offer. The question is, how do we harness these technologies to the benefit of the planet, life, humankind, and so on and so forth? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Last question from Professor Kumar, who is the principal of the Architecture College here.
Yes, of course, my beloved classmate.
Professor Kumar.
Professor Kumar, who was in that picture, by the way, that I showed you first. Yes, Professor Kumar.
Hi, Mahesh. So I had this philosophical question. See, I thought robots are only machines.
Sure.
They are not persons. And I was also clear that I am not a robot. But then you said human beings are also robots. in your presentation. So I thought that without free will, we are also simply robots. That's my feeling. So I feel that, I could be wrong, that until a robot is built that can express its own free will without being programmed to do so by a human being, I think we still have that distinction between a human being and a robot. Is that right?
Excellent question indeed. And I think there is a good point to be taken there, SK, of course. I expect that question from you. And let's talk about that. I think if we talk about consciousness and life and so on and so forth, there is an entire branch addressing just those questions, right, that SK has raised. And the answer is, we think we have free will, but we don't. I'm sorry, but that is actually the neurological answer. From neuroscientists, the answer is there is no free will. Free will is a creation, it's a concoction, it is something we made up so we can feel good about it, but actually there is no such thing as free will. Because what I'm saying right now has already been said in my mind even before I realize I said it. That's actually a neuroscience finding. So what is free will? Is it conscious or is it subconscious? Or are we somehow is things flowing through us without necessarily, but free will is certainly a construct. So I wonder, I mean, this is arguable eminently, of course, but I wonder if there is the definition of free will or framework of free will is what distinguishes human and robot. Our life, biological life and artificial life. There are new AIs where people are wondering how that is even working and what is happening in the mind of the AI in the neural networks of the AI. So I think it is interesting. It is fascinating, scary, and powerful. So I'd say I would challenge the notion of free will from certainly scientific perspective or philosophical perspective too. We can talk more about that. But thank you for the question.
Sure, we can. Thank you, sir. Thanks the audience for also the questions they have asked, and you have patiently answered them. But we are not done with Professor Mahesh yet. We have seen his scientist mind. Until now, we haven't seen his artistic mind yet. I now know that you're a prolific poet, writer, and you also confess that you were pretty serious about it. And maybe as a parting words or as to leave the audience with some thoughts, I'd like to request you to please share something from your repertoire.
Oh, well. Yes, thank you. And yes, I do write poetry. It used to be a hobby, but now actually I've integrated that into my scholarly work. So my latest one is coming out in October. So Tom Main of Morphosis is bringing out a book on Morphosis models. He has asked me to write a chapter. I told him, I'm going to write a poem for you. He said, great, write it. And so I've written it for him. And so it's going to be coming out in October, that book, with the poem in there. But actually, I'm finding that poetry is a deeper and more profound way of expressing a number of phenomena and possibilities and ponder the human condition. And so that is why I choose poetry and fiction as modalities of expression, including I wrote my graduate thesis as a work of fiction on Banaras. So I embraced it, and I am now, shall we say, bolder about integration of it into how we describe and work with it. And so I find it much easier to express myself through poetry than through prose. There you have it.
I'd like to hear a few words.
Oh, well, well, let me see. Maybe yes. How about, let's do this. We are not that far away from Mother's Day, and my mother is here, so I might actually, conveniently, it is right here. So I'm going to maybe read a poem about Mother's Day, and some of you have already listened to this or heard this from Facebook or wherever I posted it, where you are lovely friends. So here it goes. From a mother, we emerge mysteriously and helplessly, crying but naked, peeing and pooping and not knowing how to burp well. From the mother and her mother and a long lineage of many mothers' hearts. From an eternal spring, we emerge as fledgling startups, dependent, individual, clueless, and of course, crying. Yet, wearing the genes of eternity, advancing since the moment universe was the sole alma mater, the nourishing mother. Her love is the potion, the Milky Way of our consciousness, nourishing our senses. Many a story narrated and lullabies sung. In her arms and her lap, we emerge and evolve, become ourselves with a sense and a spluttering sensibility, the primordial sound, easiest to utter, tough to behold. Her hand, her heart, her gauge, her patience, and her many tears which we did not witness. Mother's Day we celebrate with gratitude for her grace and a debt we can never repay. In principle, but express our gratitude and kind wishes for the mother, the only one from whom we emerge. Mothers, wish you a day to give us a chance to reflect and express our love for the gift of life, a mark of your love, my mother. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there you have it.
Thank you, Professor Mahesh.
Well,
it was
thank
a
you for
lovely
that wonderful
moment for
question.
all of us that your parents are also accompanying you and you had shared your feelings and emotions, and I think quite will be there in our memories. May I request parents of Dr. Mahesh to please accompany him onto the stage while we get an opportunity to felicitate him. Can somebody please escort?
We thank Dr. Mahesh, sir, our keynote speaker, for the detailed and clearly illustrated session, making us aware of the capabilities of artificial intelligence and machine learning in architecture. We also thank architect Aditya, sir, for being an excellent moderator.
We'll do that actually on the ground.
Yes, I think that's good enough.
Not on the stage.
May I now request architect Aditya, sir, to felicitate Dr. Mahesh Garu.
Thank you. Thank you for your affection and love, and what an extraordinary audience and interaction that has been. I'll always remember it. I appreciate it. Thank you.